I won't be taking too long time. The only thing I want to stress is the following. There's been a issue with Anna. We had an Anna in our family as well, who is a married woman in Diyarbakir. She was the wife of a sheikh, and years later she would come to our house to pray, and we as children would watch her and try to understand. And years later, Anna got Alzheimer's, and her ex-husband came in from Syria and found out that she was alive. And watched his wife with tears in his eyes. It was in the Surp neighborhood. We used to live in that neighborhood as well. Well, the Surp church still stands, but our houses, our streets, as far as we know, have been torn down. We do hope that someday we will be able to go there and see its present state. And I'd like to remember the poet Shiraz. Not just certain neighborhoods of Diyarbakir, but Aleppo, neighborhoods in Aleppo are bombed every day. And we've heard brothers from Aleppo with Armenian identity. I'd like to remember two lines from Shiraz. So many springs turn to winter, but the world still blossoms and still fresh. Many people come and go, but the world still at blossom, still fresh. Many cradles turn to grave, but the world still a child, yeah, and still young, still ignorant. I do hope that the world will lose its childhood and ignorance and find its identity, and human beings become human beings. Also, break the shackles of slavery of its identity, and I do hope flags will lose their color and they will all turn white. Hope that they will all lose their meaning. That is all I have to say now. We will first listen to Suren Danielyan from Armenia. Head of the Diaspora Literature Department of Hachapur Edepuyan School, and Vulnerability of Fundamental Identity Issues in Armenia will be his topic. Then we will listen to Higutyun Marutyan, again the Armenia Academy of Sciences, doctor from the Department of Ethnology. His presentation will be on the year 1990's 24th April Walk and the expressions of overcoming the genocide victimhood. Our final speakers will be Ruben Galician, who is a cartographer and independent researcher, and he has an honorary doctorate from the Academy of Sciences of Armenia. He will be tendering his presentation in English on the basis of maps. Thank you. I would like to greet each and every one of you, dear friends, and I just realize that my presentation, in essence, is a little bit different from the others, because the identity issues in Armenia, yes, they exist, they are of priority, and their ways to overcome them are difficult, just as they are in the diaspora. It has been 170 years. And Eastern and Western Armenians, the division between them was visible. Political stances, empires who refused each other, who rejected each other, and the cultural notions were differentiated during this period. National history, perceptions which have reached no resolution, traditional symbols, and the complexities brought about by them. This is the sort of mess that they've created. We know that the political parties which are identified as national have fed the flames even more. We do know that, unfortunately, all of these have gained ground and are being expressed through different interpretations. During the time that stretches from 1915-1920 to today, two planes have been created under the names of Eastern and Western Armenians. Our issue here, above all, is to identify the common weights and to create the basis of a national outlook. It is the fact that Western Armenians' values are at risk of perishing, and today an organized, empowered Eastern Armenian in its final form imposes its dominant characteristic on all Armenian plains. The Republic of Armenia, the Armenian state, assumes the role of big brother in following this politics. We were accustomed to this from the Soviet era. At that time, Russia was at the role of the big brother in political, social, or cultural, all domains really. We were all shaped with the values of the Eastern Armenian, and as strange as it may be, we are at war with each other, and sometimes we even draw swords over areas of maybe tertiary importance. Yesterday and today, the Eastern Armenian education had a primitive and simple definition, and these can be observed in universities during class hours as well. We can see this in its usage of Eastern Armenian, in all its usage. How many authors can we list who write in, how many of those who write in Western Armenian have found values corresponding to theirs in Armenian schools, in schools of Armenia? They've been subjected to discriminatory and exclusive treatment. We yet again face similar issues, and these bring about serious problems. We are taking the first steps to overcoming this difficult process at this moment in order to realize our scientific potential. We are actually very late to do that. We can talk about three groups with regards to the general organization of vulnerability. The definition of vulnerability by itself is a relative situation, and We are faced with situations of crises with regards to phenomena old and new, and we are at the start of this journey. The political perception of vulnerability. In 1926, a great majority of Soviet Armenia refugees, asylum seekers have faced great difficulties in the process of forming a national identity. And their Western Armenian identities have in time caused a great deal of issues. This is a very big loss. And this is precisely what Şahan Şahnur describes. It's not just characteristic to the 1920s. Even today, Western Armenians, when concerning today's Armenia's past and present. For example, Hrant Papazyan, born in Western Armenia, Daniel Barjan, Havak Siamanto, they've experienced great vulnerability in language, which constitutes identity and nationality. These people used to define their own works, their own philosophies in Western Armenian. In the perception of political problems, Şahan Şahnur, again, has played a much bigger role in Europe and in the US. Zahrat, who was considered a Western Armenian, said that it was like being lost at a sea filled with others. Historic memory and cultural heritage. Perhaps today we can express these in the following manner. French Armenians are French, Argentinian Armenians are Argentinians, and this is something visible. Russia, China, Korea, and all the other diasporas, they're all opposing and saying, we've remained Armenians, we define ourselves as Armenians, but it seems that they are going through a much more difficult process these days. We are now outside the term Armenian. We're left outside the term Armenian. And secondly, the literary dimensions of vulnerability. And starting from 1922, the Apelyan writing order was seeking political agendas, and the Soviet Armenia, which was dubbed young, was still making an effort to distance itself from Armenians outside of Armenia, and was in an effort to refuse its literary accumulation. Let us not forget they were in an attempt to create vulnerability by rejecting Mesrop's inherited literary legacy. Of course, Hovanestumanians and Armenian writers, literary peoples, authors, views would be refused by them. Tumanyan definitively states, well, Baron Manuk Aperian and his own supporters, Margosyan and the others, are not at fault. They did not subject their work to control. The folk singer of all Armenians hoped that we could return back from this mistake at once. It was a complete surprise for the administration that Western Armenians and Iranian Armenians would show such resistance when it came to their language. They preserved it. They preserved the classical spelling and dictation against the pressures of Armenia. Hagop Ashagahan, Vahab Tegeyan, and Robert Hadijian, they all of them embraced the classical dictation and spelling, and they have not taken a step back until now, or even to this day. And what was a saving grace at this point was the literary awakening at the start of the 20th century, and we have yet to overcome this. The cause and the result, as far as we can guess, was a unity in writing with the same spelling, same dictation. Misak Mezarans, Vahandaryan, Daniel Vorujan, Hovanes Tumanyan, Siamanto, and Yerishecharans. And let us not forget another thing. Their literary dialogue has brought about great winnings for us. The diaspora Armenians have preserved that classical spelling and dictation up to this day, and even today, in the face of the global attacks of other authors, they're in a great effort to preserve what is local. And thirdly, it is without a doubt, there are reflections of vulnerability in education. These are fields of close contact with each other, and it is natural that the existing one will be passed on to other generations, but what way will this transmission occur? Let me say again, at least with the case of Armenia, in strategic education projects, the Western element or Western effect has mostly been excluded. To name a few examples, in public schools, for the most part, they say nothing about Western Armenian, but they teach Western Armenian poets. What are children to do? What would be their perceptions? And I'm not even mentioning the teachers. This creates different perceptions and hesitations. The same horrific situation occurs at the university level as well. In the teaching of many languages, there are methods that are tried and tested, but Western Armenian constitutes only a very small part in university level education. It's offered only in one semester and only 1 hour per week. This language has no chance of being embraced and adopted. This is really a slap in the face of identity. Is it a coincidence that after the fall of Aleppo, the few families, the children of the few families that came to Armenia have had difficulty in finding a school that it fits their own accumulation? these children had to lose their Western Armenian. Now we as a nation have to think. In the creation of a linguistic national identity, we need to make great efforts. Why are we being so sharp in our words? Let me try to explain. In many meetings, scientific meetings, in Armenia or in the diasporas, issues have been put forth and identity has been considered the essential element. If in the Republic of Armenia today we want to see it as a state policy or state politics, we need to reassess the identity issue with Tumanyan's optimism. Thank you.